So onto The Gathering Storm, and things are really picking up pace now. The first thing we get from this book though is a beautiful little foreword from the new co-author, Brandon Sanderson. And I've actually never read any of Sanderson's books. Now, being a fan of fantasy, I know that he is very prolific and a lot of people love his books as well. There is no reason why I haven't read them yet. I just haven't got around to it. So I assume regardless of him being the author or co-author here, it's definitely something that I would have jumped into anyway, but I'm excited to get a taste of Sanderson. Now, I know a lot of scenes were already written by Jordan, and obviously a ton of the content was already premedicated by Jordan as well. But I feel like this is an opportunity for me to get a taste of Sanderson, so I know what I'm getting into when I do move into his series moving forwards. And I'm really looking forward to it. From his preamble / acknowledgements and foreword, I can see that he's a fan first and foremost. He doesn't seem to have his ego involved in the writing at all. He's just excited to be able to help a hero and potentially someone who maybe even got him into writing to help that person finish what is clearly going to be one of the greatest fantasy, if not the best fantasy series of all time. Then we move into the book's introductions, and I think that this preamble is the best of any of the books so far for a couple of reasons, but the first one is because of the very first scene. So we jump into the scene with the farmers and we meet him, and we also meet the people who are working for him, and then we see this storm coming, and that's the theme, right? A storm is coming. The book is called The Gathering Storm, and essentially it's like a very primal urge. He can't really understand it, but he knows that he needs to be heading to the last battle. And I kind of liken it to how birds migrate. I doubt any of them are like, hey, it's time to migrate. They just know. They have a sense deep inside them. This is how it needs to be. And it's just clear that this final battle, everybody can feel it. Everybody knows it's coming. Everyone knows they can't escape it. That's a common theme, and that they have to be part of it. And it really gives a sense of the width, depth, and just epicness of this final event and everything that's been leading towards it as well. And what's great about this introduction is we jump around a lot of storylines, and that's happened before, but each storyline progresses and is also super relevant. We've had some really cool intros before that I thought were going to be very relevant a couple of books down the line, and they never really ended up being. So I would argue, outside of the very first book, Eye of the World, obviously that intro is super relevant, but probably I'll be able to appreciate it after I've finished the last book and then gone back and read it. I would say this intro was probably the most currently relevant and most exciting, and included the most characters as well. We get some of the Forsaken, and I've come to decide that it must be Demandred, who is Mazrim Taim. And it just seems logical because it's mentioned that Demandred always likes to secure a throne and likes to secure an army. Now, although he's not got a typical throne of one of the nations of the world, he kind of is the throne keeper. He has set himself up as Mahale, which is the leader, right, if I'm not mistaken, and then also has his army of Asherman. And it would just make so much sense because Masana's over there to gather as many Aes Sedai to her and split the rest, and to have Demandred there as Mazrim Taim would just make a ton of sense. So that's my prediction. We also see that Grendel was really set up to be our big baddie or villain this time round. She's been sent to go and make an impression on Rand. Rand's in Arad Doman, and also she is in that area as well. So I think we're going to see her as our big showdown by the end of the book at least. And then we see Masema, the end of Masema's journey, and what a strange journey it's been. He does seem to get a little bit of clarity just before the end, but I imagine all of us get quite a lot of clarity just before the end of what's important, what isn't, and I think everything probably fades away. I've never died before, but that would be my guess. I imagine that, it really strips away a lot of the falsehoods and illusions, and you really get moments of clarity, and Masema clearly got one. And Masema's a strange character. I definitely admire his level of commitment to his own idea that he's the prophet. You have to admire someone who doubles down so regularly on their own insanity. And when I eventually reread these books, which will obviously happen in the coming years, I think Masema's character is one that I'm going to pay a lot closer attention to in the early books, because I don't really remember him. I know he was there and thereabouts in Falme, and he was like a side character, but as far as I'm aware, there wasn't any really obvious indication that he was going to disappear and then come back, bam, as the prophet. So I will be excited on my reread to pay close attention to Massimo and see if the hints are there. And knowing Jordan and his intelligence, foresight, his understanding of Tchaikovsky's smoking gun concept, where, you know, if you mention something earlier in the scene, then it must be, sorry, earlier in a book or earlier in a movie, it can't be there for no reason, it has to be there for a later purpose. Jordan has a great understanding of this, so I will be excited to go back and reread and see what I pick up from Massimo's character, because the prophet thing to me seemed to come completely out of the blue, which might be different for you. Maybe you did pick up on that. So we finished the introductions and then we jump straight into the storylines. And similar to the introductions, the storylines jump about. We get a lot of different storylines, and most characters only get one chapter and then we jump to a different character, which hasn't always been like that. And I don't know if that's we're getting closer to the end thing, or if that's a Sanderson thing. If it's a Sanderson thing, I don't hate it. Now, yes, admittedly, we are at the business end of the book. No storyline is boring anyway. So, you know, even if it was Jordan, I would still feel the same way. But the way I feel right now is I'm excited for every storyline. And that hasn't always been the case in Wheel of Time. I'd even go as far as to say that Jordan has a very meandering style. And does that take away from his style? No, I don't think so, because he's so good at foreshadowing and building up these characters. But some books and some characters and some storylines have been hard to read, and they sometimes get hundreds of pages back to back, or it feels like that anyway. And there's been some characters and some storylines that when I finish a chapter and then I read the first paragraph of the next one and I see it's the same character of the same storyline I've been reading for the past 50 to 75 pages where not much has happened, that's been really frustrating. So it is a nice change of pace to jump from character to character to character so quickly at the start of this book. And we start off with another beautiful chapter with Egwene. Now, Egwene's chapter after chapter after chapter have been fantastic, and she seems to just have epiphany after epiphany in every single scene. And it's all been building up to this, like her time with the Wise Ones. I feel like she got epiphanies from her time being, what would you call it, leashed by the Adem, and also her time as an Aes Sedai, where essentially they were just trying to put her as a fake Amirlin, someone, a puppet essentially that they can control, and it's all just paying off for her. There's not much more I can say about Egwene. She's been incredible, and I've just been gushing about her for the last couple of videos. And in her storyline, she has essentially discovered that the oath rod has been used to give forth oaths. She's discovered that there are sitters who are actually communicating and talking with each other and trying to find solutions, and she has become such a great orator. So she's been so able to convince people and negotiate and show people the way and help change people's minds. She reminds me of like Julius Caesar. It's like she's almost like an irresistible force when she begins talking to somebody, especially if that person is an Aes Sedai, because she's just correct. Like, she completely seems to understand what an Aes Sedai is, or what an Aes Sedai really should be, you know, based on what, you know, the ideals that we were told the Aes Sedai should be like at the start of this entire series. And what's been beautiful has been seeing the shame of the Aes Sedai when she shows the pure version of what they should be to them. And it really, I feel like that's been coming the entire book. Like, I feel like we've always known that Aes Sedai aren't what they have been previously, and I think Egwene is going to usher in a golden age of Aes Sedai, and I'm really excited for it, because the Aes Sedai, as frustrating as they've been this entire series, they have the potential to be something fantastic. And on a side note, like, I don't know if we're going to get Moiraine back into the real world again. Like, it appears that she is going to be alive in the Tower of Genji in some capacity. If she is back in the world again, I think of all of the characters that came from Two Rivers, I think she will be easily most proud of either Nynaeve or Egwene. But I think she'll be most shocked by Egwene and Egwene's progression. Then we jump to Aviendha, and Aviendha is being punished, but we don't know why. And I have two ideas. So my first idea is maybe that she is a wise one already, and she just isn't coming out and claiming it. and that is a problem in the wise one's eyes. So, you know, that might be the reason she's being punished. It's like, just stand up and claim that you're a wise one. Maybe something along those lines. And the second thing is, I think maybe she's being punished because she isn't properly utilizing her relationship with Rand. So I think maybe they are subtly, because they're asking her a lot of questions about Rand and what she thinks about what Rand's doing, and for the Aiel and for just people in general. I think maybe they're trying to push her to lay a reef down and marry him and utilize her position as a wise one, or at least a wise one in training, and B, his wife, so that she can help guide. And that's something that so many wise ones do with like the clan chiefs, etc. as well. We see it on a regular basis. And I think maybe one of those two things is what they're pushing her towards and why she's being punished, because they don't seem like mad at her. They just think, hey, listen, you're better than this. You should be doing more. So those are my guesses. Knowing Aiel culture, as I don't, it's very confusing. I might be a million miles off, but those are the guesses that I would hazard if I was Aviendha. And then we jump to Cadsuane and the other Aes Sedai, who are essentially interrogating Semirhage. And we get good insight into Cadsuane. Not often do we get the paragraphs and chapters from her perspective, but we do see some of her self-control, because she talks about wanting to smash her cup and stamp on the pieces for hours, but instead she's showing composure. And that made me chuckle, because we've all felt like that before. Like, stamping on pieces of shattered glass for an hour seems so over the top, but sometimes you just get so frustrated that feels like the right thing to do. And I was thinking Cadsuane really is drawing a lot of parallels between herself and Semirhage, like age-wise, with regards to their level of information, knowledge, power, their understanding of like control and self-control, but also their own understanding of importance. And I was trying to think, you know, if I was Cadsuane and I viewed it as, oh, I need to figure out how to break myself, and that's what's going to help me break Semirhage, what would I do? So I thought, like, what is Cadsuane most aware of? What is most important to her? Because I imagine when interrogating someone, that's what you need to attack, like the thing that's most important to them. You have to try and take that away. Cadsuane's very aware of the fact that she is quite old and she doesn't have a huge amount of time left. She's also quite aware of the fact that she can do things better than other people and that she can't waste time. And she's also quite aware of the fact that the final battle is coming. So based on that, it would probably have to be some kind of basic humiliation, or just give her a task that is utterly pointless and has no one's attention on her and is just a huge waste of her time. I feel like those are the types of things that would frustrate Cadsuane. So maybe some of the frustrating tasks that, you know, Aviendha has actually just been given, like, you know, sorting different color grains from each other, or just moving rocks from one place to the other. Not even something that's going to be really useful, just something that's completely pointless, waste of time, and that no one's even paying attention to. And that would really mess with her ego and sense of self-importance, but also the fact that she knows the final battle's coming and there's not much time to place herself as Nay Bliss. So something along those lines would be how I would go about it. And then we jump across to Perrin, and I think Perrin's story is going to be full circle soon. So when we first met Perrin, he was kind of like the quiet giant. Like, he is intelligent, but he likes to take his time before he speaks. He's very unassuming, very humble, and quite quiet, like I said. So I think the final step for Perrin in his development is, what he needs to do is he needs to pick up the banner, and he just needs to say, you know, to hell with it, I'm going to believe in myself. I'm going to believe I'm a leader, that I deserve to lead these people, that I'm going to rebuild like Maniferin or something, and I'm going to lead these people into the final battle as the leader I am. And I think that is the final step for Perrin's self-development and development arc, and I'm excited for that to happen. One thing that was quite nice in that storyline is we get to see Tam. And in my initial predictions from, I think, maybe even the first book, I thought Tam was going to be a much bigger deal. I thought that he was going to realize that someone's telling Rand he's going to be the Dragon Reborn, and he's going to go and guide him and spend time with him. I kind of thought that he's going to be like what Tom Merrilin has been for, you know, like Matt, or what Tom Merrilin's been for Elaine, like essentially more of a father figure. Now, I do think we are going to get a reunion between Tam and Rand, and I think that's really important, because the clear issue that we're getting over and over again from people who know Rand is that he's forgotten himself. He's forgotten how to be the caring, loving boy/man that he was before. And nothing humbles you as much as spending time with your father, I would imagine, if your father really was a great father. And we can tell from the first book that Rand really looked up to him. Like, he really looked up to him. He really saw him as like this great father figure. And I'm just really excited for that, because I think that might be a bit of a breakthrough for Rand in like being a bit more human, I'm hoping. So that's about 200 pages worth of The Gathering Storm, and it's been incredible. I can't wait to get back to it. I was actually frustrated I had to pause to make this video, and although it's been awesome, not a huge amount has happened so far. And yeah, I'm just so fired up for the rest of this book. But before you go, I have a question for you, and it's something that I had been thinking about. So in my Midway Awards, which is a video I did after like the 7th book, I did one category, and that category was who has had the biggest development arc so far. And I believe that I selected Egwene, and I think that's true. I think she had the toughest time at that point with regards to like development arc and who she was from the beginning to the end. But I have a different question for you. My question for you is, who do you think has had, of our main characters, who do you think has had the easiest ride? And I put a couple of notes together based on, you know, our main characters and the ride they've had. And I have a clear answer I'm going to tell you, but I just want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Like, who do you think from our main characters has really just cruised to success so far? So of course, number one is Rand, and it's definitely not Rand. Not only does he have the madness, which is Lews Therin in his head, which is arguably just enough on its own. He lost a hand. He was in that box. He has been just so responsible for wars, for battles. Like, the level of responsibility on this person's shoulders is ridiculous. He also had to like cleanse the taint. He had to deal with the taint, and there's just absolutely no way that Rand has had the easiest ride. So I'm going to eliminate him for you. Next was Mat. Now, Mat, I believe, has had quite a cushy ride. However, the first 2 books, or maybe even 2.5, however long the time of the influence, however long he had the influence of the dagger on him, those were pretty bleak. And I can imagine that that probably felt like a deep, dark, ugly depression. So I can't like minimize that. That seems like it probably sucked. And alongside that, he also died. So obviously that sucks as well. He died after his conversation with either the Eelfin or the Elfin in Ruidim. So, you know, that's pretty big. And then he also had his brain tampered with by them as well, which it must be so frustrating. And he got a lot of gifts from that, don't get me wrong. He got like some great memories and some great skills, like how to be a great general. But also having your brain messed with by like almost extraterrestrial beings must be very, very scary. But he's definitely a contender. Like, he's had some long periods where it's just been really good for him because of his luck. Then we go to Perrin. Perrin had his whole family murdered, and I know a lot of people lost family, especially if you're from Two Rivers, but you know, that was a really deep scene. That was really difficult. He also lost his wife for like 2 months, but he now has her back. He had to deal with like becoming a bit wolfy, but I low-key think that that is really cool. The ability to smell and sense what people's real emotions are, to see and hear really well and converse with wolves. I mean, yeah, it must have been a shock, but come on, that's really cool. However, he has had a ton of responsibilities, and he doesn't have any of those memories that Mat has, or any of the deference that automatically comes to Rand. So yes, he is Tavaren, but he had to deal with just a lot of smaller battles with smaller armies involved, and he's had to get roll his sleeves up and get himself muddy and dirty time after time. Then we go to Egwene. I think Egwene had a really tough time. So initially she got collared, which is just, that sounds awful. That's essentially just becoming a slave. Then we had her apprenticeship with the Wise Ones, which was actually pretty miserable. Then she was stuck in the middle of like huge political battles with the rebels, and was set up to be essentially like a puppet Emelian. And now she is in the White Tower, essentially just getting beaten up every single day as penance. So she has had quite a tough time. Then we have Nynaeve. We had that terrible torture scene with Morgedion, and Nynaeve had a terrible time for about 2 books in that like early to mid section, where she was really going through her development arc. She was overlooked by all of the others. She had none of her authority still, and yeah, I just remember feeling sorry for her during that period of time. She's also just sent her husband off to the final battle, which must be quite stressful. And she was heavily involved in the cleansing of the taint, which probably took a lot out of her. And I also just feels like she feels a lot of responsibility for all of the other main characters, being a little bit older, but also being the wisdom from their village. And although that isn't like something that's like being tortured or anything like that, it must weigh on her regularly, probably almost every single day. She must feel a bit of responsibility for these people who are out gallivanting around the world. And then finally, we have Elaine. And Elaine has to be my pick for the person who's had it easiest. Now, granted, she's pregnant with twins. I've never been pregnant, so that's probably really difficult. But she's always been with someone who can help her out. She's always had someone who can kind of take control of things, like Nynaeve or Elaine or Bridget. Now, she had a tough time with regards to the succession in Caemlyn, but she did also know from Min's viewing that she was going to live through that as well, which takes a bit of responsibility off your shoulders. But before that Caemlyn storyline, I can't really remember when she's had any like big solo tough missions. Now granted, I'm on book 12. There's probably some things I've forgotten about each of these characters, but my pick would have to be Elaine for the person who's managed to have like a bit of an easy ride. And on top of everything, she's also royalty. So she gets to walk around with that. And it hasn't helped her out a bunch, especially since she's become Aes Sedai. But just with regards to the day-to-day life, like even when our guys were having a tough time of it in the first couple of books, she avoided that first book or so, and she was just a princess in Andor, or Caemlyn, sorry. So yeah, my pick would be Elaine, but I'm really excited to hear your pick. Outside of that, please like, please subscribe, please give me a thumbs up, anything that will help out the channel. I love making these videos. I've really enjoyed it so far, and I can't wait to see you guys on the next one. Have an amazing day.